We've finally reached the conclusion of the story surrounding the 3 Chinese astronauts who became stranded in space. So today, we're wrapping everything up by addressing the final questions. What exactly happened to their spacecraft? Are they actually returning home safely? And most importantly, what comes next? Every Shenzhou mission to Tiangong ends with a formal handover. The outgoing crew welcomes the newly arrived Taikonauts, who assume full control of daily operations aboard the space station. For a short period, both Shenzhou vehicles remain docked at Tiangong while the crews settle in and exchange duties. Shenzhou 21, launched on October 31, 2025, carried 3 Taikonauts to the orbital outpost. It marks China's 16th crewed spaceflight, the 21st Shenzhou mission overall, and the 10th crew rotation for Tiangong. But things didn't go according to plan on the morning the previous crew was supposed to depart for Earth. The China Manned Space Agency, CMSA, announced that Shenzhou 20 may have been hit by a small piece of space debris, forcing an unexpected delay in the crew's return. CMSA did not immediately disclose what failed or where the problem was located. But now we finally have answers. According to state-run Xinhua, the Shenzhou 20 spacecraft no longer meets the safety requirements needed for a secure crew return and will remain in orbit to continue scientific work. Officials added that small cracks were found in the return capsule's viewport window, most likely caused by an external impact from orbiting debris. Shenzhou is built in 3 main sections: a forward orbital module, a central reentry module, and a rear service module. The logic behind this structure is straightforward. Only the reentry module must endure the extreme heat of atmospheric reentry. That means the orbital and service modules don't need heavy thermal shielding, saving weight while maximizing usable space inside the spacecraft. This is precisely why cracks in the reentry capsule are such a serious problem. It's the only part of Shenzhou that actually returns to Earth, and the reentry phase is one of the most violent and unforgiving parts of any space mission. The capsule's design is a careful balance. It must be spacious enough for the crew, yet shaped to maintain aerodynamic stability as it plunges back through the atmosphere. Even the windows must survive harsh conditions. Each pane is crafted from 80 specialized pieces of quartz glass. Manufactured in Qinhuangdao in northern China's Hebei province, every piece goes through dozens of production stages before being certified for spaceflight. These windows must withstand temperatures approaching 1,000 degrees Celsius, brutal thermal swings, intense radiation, and still transmit more than 95% of visible light. So the fact that something powerful enough to crack that glass struck the capsule highlights just how dangerous space debris has become. And this is far from rare. Millions of debris fragments orbit Earth, many no larger than a grain of sand. They originate from rocket launches, exploded satellites, and past collisions. When an object breaks apart in orbit, all the fragments scatter along their own trajectories, forming a debris cloud. But individually, each piece follows its own orbit. Here's the frightening part. You would never see debris coming. Relative to a spacecraft, debris can strike at speeds up to 10 times faster than a bullet. Many fragments are also about the same size as a bullet, or even smaller. You can't see a bullet in midair, and you definitely can't see anything moving 10 times faster. When 2 objects collide in orbit, it doesn't resemble a slow-motion crash. It looks more like both objects instantly explode. At those speeds, the shock waves inside the materials don't have time to travel before the entire structure is already tearing apart. That's how collisions generate countless fragments, each one kicked into a new orbit and drifting away. Even so, China conducted a thorough assessment of the situation. Spacecraft are designed with multiple layers of backup protection. A cracked window typically isn't catastrophic from a purely structural standpoint, but there are still big concerns. During re-entry, intense heat and pressure could cause the crack to spread, and no one is going to gamble with crew safety. Even if the window were to fail completely, there are protective systems designed to shield the astronauts. But no agency wants to rely on emergency backups if there's a safer alternative, which leads to the most logical decision: use a fresh, undamaged spacecraft for the return journey. And that's exactly what China chose to do. The 3 astronauts from China's Shenzhou 20 mission ultimately left Tiangong and returned to Earth aboard the fully functional Shenzhou 21 spacecraft. Over roughly 6 hours, Shenzhou 21 undocked from the forward port of the Tianhe core module at 11:14 a.m. China Standard Time, or 3:14 a.m. UTC, and maneuvered to a safe distance to begin its return sequence. First, it jettisoned the orbital module. Then the service module fired its engines to perform the deorbit burn for both itself and the reentry capsule carrying the crew, separating immediately afterward. The landing system features a clever design that uses a single parachute and a braking rocket. Once the module slows down, the heat shield drops away, similar to the landing bag deployment used in NASA's Mercury program. The re-entry capsule deployed its red and white striped main parachute before touching down later that afternoon at a remote site in the Gobi Desert, about 5.5 hours after leaving the space station. Like the Apollo Command Module, the Shenzhou re-entry capsule is used only once and then discarded. Commander Chen Dong, Chen Zhongrui, and Wang Jia exited the capsule and appeared to be in good condition after their final parachute-assisted descent to Earth. They touched down safely at the Dongfeng landing site in Inner Mongolia shortly before 3:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:45 Greenwich Mean Time, on November 14th, following more than 6 months in low Earth orbit aboard the Tiangong station. Within minutes of landing, recovery teams arrived at the capsule to assist the crew and retrieve the scientific experiments they brought back. With this mission, Chen Dong has now accumulated a national record of 418 days in space across 3 flights. Wang Jie and Chen Zhongrui have each logged 204 days on their debut missions. Now that the astronauts are out of the spacecraft, they will undergo routine medical checks before traveling to Beijing for detailed post-mission exams and time to readjust to gravity after half a year in orbit. But this situation has created an unusual challenge aboard Tiangong. The 3 astronauts who launched on Shenzhou 21, Jiang Lu, Wu Yangzhe, and Jiang Hongjiang, remain on the nearly 100 metric ton station with only the damaged Shenzhou 20 available as their transport home. According to Yang Yuguang, chairman of the Space Transportation Committee at the International Astronautical Federation, China always keeps a backup spacecraft and a backup rocket ready for rapid response rescue missions. This is why the Shenzhou 22 mission has suddenly become critical. Even though the spacecraft and rocket aren't fully assembled, both are already positioned inside the vehicle assembly building. China follows 2 possible preparation timelines, either roughly 8.5 days or 16 days, during which engineers can complete all required tests and inspections for both the spacecraft and its Long March 2F launch vehicle. These systems are extremely complex, with numerous subsystems that must be checked, with no exceptions. Yang notes that while this is challenging, China has rehearsed for this scenario many times. He expects Shenzhou 22 to be ready for launch within a matter of days, and realistically, it may be their only viable option. One major complication is docking space. The Tianhe core module of Tiangong has 3 docking ports, one at the front, one at the rear, and one on the nadir, underside. All 3 are currently occupied by Shenzhou 20, Shenzhou 21, and the Tianzhou 9 cargo ship. That means there's no open port for a new spacecraft to dock. The most logical system-level solution is the one China already executed. Bring the Shenzhou 20 crew home using the intact Shenzhou 21 return vehicle that frees up the forward docking port, allowing Shenzhou 22 to launch a few days later and dock there, just as CMSA has now confirmed. Yang explained that Shenzhou 22, together with its Long March 2 FY-22 rocket, will be launched in a crew-ready configuration, fully capable of carrying astronauts. But with no crew on board, it will then dock to the forward port of the Tianhe module and remain attached for around 6 months. After that, the Shenzhou 21 crew will return to Earth using this newly docked spacecraft. Once that happens, operations will return to their normal schedule. The original Shenzhou 22 crew will become the Shenzhou 23 crew, launching roughly 6 months later aboard the newly prepared Shenzhou 23 spacecraft. Meanwhile, after Shenzhou 22 launches, China will rapidly accelerate production and testing of the Shenzhou 23 vehicle and its Long March 2F rocket to keep the rotation cycle on track. In the end, the core issue behind all of this remains the same. We desperately need a better system for managing space debris. The International Space Station relies on Whipple shields to protect itself. These multi-layered shields can withstand particles up to about 3 millimeters in size. The concept is smart. The first layer breaks apart the incoming object, the next layer breaks those fragments down even more, and by the time anything reaches the final layer, it's too small to cause severe damage. But the system has limitations. Stopping larger debris requires thicker, heavier shields with greater spacing between layers, and at some point that becomes too heavy and expensive for launch. Even the ISS cannot be fully protected from every hazardous fragment that's too small to track, but still large enough to threaten spacecraft. This is where space tracking networks play a crucial role. The U.S. Space Surveillance Network, SSN, operated by the U.S. Air Force, uses radar and optical sensors around the world to track objects in orbit. It can monitor anything softball-sized or larger in low Earth orbit, and anything about the size of a basketball or larger in geosynchronous orbit. With this tracking data, the SSN can predict close approaches, potential collisions, and object re-entries. Several other nations, including China, operate their own tracking systems, helping build a global effort to keep spaceflight safe. Some advanced radar systems can detect very tiny objects as they pass through their beams, but cannot track them long enough to map their full orbits. So scientists estimate the number of small debris pieces by counting these brief radar hits and extrapolating. But that's about as far as current technology can take us. We cannot control inactive objects. We also cannot move satellites that have lost maneuvering ability, such as the Hubble Space Telescope, in certain situations. And even when a satellite can maneuver, altering its orbit is not easy. It takes time, fuel, and early predictions of danger. Unlike airplanes, satellites can't simply turn or climb 1,000 feet on command. Everything is governed by orbital mechanics. There is no cheap or simple fix for the space debris crisis. Cleaning it up will take enormous resources and many years. Large debris, like spent rocket stages, is the most dangerous because it can generate even more debris if struck. But these objects are also extremely hard to move due to their mass. Meanwhile, small debris is everywhere, still capable of causing serious damage, and incredibly difficult to detect. Still, if humanity plans to expand its presence in space, we must eventually figure out how to solve this problem.